Established quorum. Vice Chair Conway. Alderman LaSpada. Alderman Hopkins. Alderman Hall. I saw Alderman Hall. Okay, we'll come back to him. Alderman Mitchell. Alderman Harris. Alderman Beal. Alderman Lee.
Present.
Alderman Ramirez. Alderman Quinn. Alderman Lopez. Alderman Moore. Alderman Curtis. Alderman O'Shea. Alderman Taylor. Alderman Mosley. Alderman Rodriguez. Alderman Scott.
Present.
Alderman Cicho Lopez. Alderman Burnett. Alderman Irvin. Alderman Taliaferro. Alderman Cardona. Alderman Wagaspack. Alderman Rodriguez Sanchez. Alderman Ramirez Rosa.
Present.
Alderman Villegas. Alderman Mitz. Alderman Spizzato. Alderman Vasquez. Alderman Riley. Alderman Knudsen. Alderman Martin. Alderman Silverstein. Chairman Dowell is here. Of Rule 59. We're at 16. Can I have a motion to allow Alderman Ramirez Rosa, Scott, and Lee to attend today's meeting by remote means? Moved by Alderman Rodriguez Sanchez. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Alderman Ramirez Rosa, Scott, and Lee are allowed to attend this meeting remotely, and I know we've confirmed them through the taking of the attendance today. Okay, I want to say Alderman Jeanette Taylor has joined us as well. She's not on the committee. Alderman Taylor, we have you. Did I miss anybody? Okay, we have 17. At this time, we will begin the public comment period. The public comment period will be limited to 30 minutes. Out of respect for everyone's time, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We have no callers that have signed up remotely, and everyone who is speaking this morning are with us today. Before we go on, I want to acknowledge the presence of former Alderman Tony Folks from the 15th Ward. I saw her here. Please stand. I just want to say hi to you. Welcome back. And also want to acknowledge Alderman Moore has joined us. We'll begin the first comments with Rodney Andrews. Followed by David Sanchez. Good morning, Mr. Andrews. You have 3 minutes. Can you speak in the mic, please?
Good morning. I just was called here, I guess, to tell about my experience with the water bill. And my bill went up to 5 figures with non-usage. And I refused to pay it because I didn't think it was right. And with getting a bill without any water being used. So a reporter came and they caught my story, and we got the city to take the bill down, and it still was too high, but it got paid. So I got a monthly bill then that was reasonable, but it still isn't what it should be because it's not being measured, and I can't get a meter. So I have to go with the existing bill and pay the water bill that's too high. But it needs to be something done about what's actually being used because I'm the only person that uses the water. So it should be, you should have a meter and you get the exact amount of usage, and then it would be accurate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. I want to acknowledge we've been joined by Alderman Irvin, David Sanchez, followed
Good morning,
by Victor Catarino.
Yes, good morning, Chair Powell and Dowell, I'm sorry, and Villegas, the Finance Department and the Water Department, members of the media. I'm an assistant to the owner of 4276 South Archer, and we've been fighting with alderman folks emeritus an $8,500 water bill for the property, and this has been going on till since the end of May. And alderman folks requested the water department to inspect 4276 South Archer, and they came 3 times. There was no leak. There was nothing wrong with the meter. The last time, the alderman requested that the meter will be replaced and inspected. The alderman requested 2 FOIAs to the fact that maybe there was construction on the sidewalk at the time of the water bill, because sometimes when the pipes are replaced, these things happen. The FOIA came back to the effect that there was no such repairs. So the next step, these are just the highlights right here. This is the bill. This is all the work that has been done by yours truly, alderman folks, and the owner. So the highlights are that the water meter was replaced on July the 12th, July the 8th to be exact. We were promised a reading of the actual usage of the water. It never came except yesterday, the day before this hearing. And alderman folks has been trying to get in touch to the bottom of the situation with finance, with the water department. She called hearings, Nancy. If it was in hearings, they said there's no balance, there's nothing. We were told to, the owner was told to pay $2,000 back in July, and that will be the end of the story. The $2,000 were paid. Right after we came out of the payment, we received another balance for $8,500. And so this is where we are at the moment. The city doesn't know where the balance is coming from, where the usage is coming from. Nobody knows anything. And if you don't pay the $8,500, we cannot get permits to do serious work that needs to be done. We need a business license. So basically, it's a difficult situation. It's very expensive. It's very stressful. And you just don't know what's going on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Victor Catarino, followed by Helen Cohn.
Yes, good morning. We're here to dispute an unusually high water bill. The usual consumption, it's an apartment. It's a 1,200 square foot apartment. It's not a warehouse, it's not a restaurant, it's not an apartment building, okay? The usual consumption of the water for this apartment is around 150 gallons a day. Now, it went up from 150 gallons to 45,000 gallons a day. So obviously there's something wrong. To bring to perspective, 45,000 gallons fills a very large swimming pool. Very large swimming pool, okay? How can we possibly use this much water, 45,000 gallons a day? There's obviously something wrong. So we're here to dispute this bill. And the other things, the report we got from the Water Department and the Finance Department do not match. So what is going on here? There's obviously a mistake made somewhere. And we'd like to get to the bottom of this because the city is holding all the permits, business license, repairs on buildings. They're holding everything back because of this water bill. So I respectfully request this be settled as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Caterino. Ms. Cohn, followed by Ms. Currington.
$58,820.71 was the final amount due to the Department of Finance for usage fees and penalties in May 2019 before we settled with the city. This amount accrued beginning in February 2014 when our laundry and dry cleaning plant was leased to a new operator. It was operated prior to that for 100 years by my husband's family. As owners of the building, we were not aware yet responsible for this debt because our tenant was receiving the bills. This came to our attention in March 2018 after 4 years of delinquency in the account by our tenant, and you've been provided with a ledger of the billing history. We interacted with finance, utility billing, business affairs, Alderman Beal, the Law Department of Collections, and an outside law firm, Talon and Castanis, which handles collections for the city of Chicago. I provided you with a timeline of 41 points of unique contact between March 2018 and June 27, 2019, when we settled with the city for $27,026.16. Our priority was to have the water shut off to freeze the debt. That took nearly 5 months until August 7, 2018. After the shutoff, the water bill continued to reflect consumption through October of 2018. During the 4-year period the water bill was delinquent, our tenant received payments for his city's contracted services totaling $401,891.01, despite a clause in the contract known as a set-off, which entitles the city to set off compensation when a contracting party owes a debt to the city. You would not think the city would need to be reminded of this, but I did, to the advanced collections clerk. You have a copy of that contract and the ledger of vendor payments to our tenant during that 4-year period. Faulty city records created a gap between 2014 and 2017 when a 2014 note shows the black box on this property could not be located for shutoff, and the facility appeared vacant. By the way, it's on the sidewalk in front of the building, which was open 6 days a week, and the water, of course, continued to flow. You have a copy of records obtained from the Freedom of Information Act regarding this item.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Cohn. Ms. Currington, followed by Lisa Beard. Shannon Currington. Sorry, Mr. Currington.
Mr. Currington. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to fight a bill of $19,000 for a water bill that no one even lives there. I've had this property for 15 years. You know, maybe some of this bill is mine. I lived there for about 9 months, and then I had a tenant in there for like 3 years. So that's 3 years and 9 months, but the rest of it, I can't figure out why do I owe this money. I had the city come there and cut the water off. It's been a year and a half. I come there, I put the key in the front door, I can hear water running in the basement. I go there, the shut-off valve is here. I used to stop the water from coming into the house. The pipe is busted down here. I got to call the city. I had them come out and cut the water off, but they're steady saying I owe money. I'm saying there's no meter there. You come in the front lawn, you just lift a little round plate up, and same thing like you're going to water your grass outside. That's how you cut the water on. There's no meter. How are you calculating this? No one lives there. I'm at a point now, I've had the property for 15 years. No one has ever lived there except me. And then I had a tenant there for 3 years, 3 years and 9 months. That's all of that money. Okay, fine. But the other rest of that, It's not mine. Why do I owe you money? No one lives there. You can ask any resident on the block, no one lives there. I come there and cut the grass several times a week or per month. No one lives there. There's no garbage being collected from there. When the guys come and empty the garbage, there's no garbage can, there's no garbage. But they're steady saying, I owe this money. I'm saying, why? Why do I owe the money? So I'm here to fight this bill. I'm hoping to get some relief. I was at the water department in April, and it was like, well, you owe $19,000. I said, why? No one lives there. No one, why? No one has been there since 2019. There's no gas. The gas has been shut off for maybe 6 years. My electric bill is like $12 a month, just enough just to have service. So I'm hoping to get some relief. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you, Mr. Currington. Lisa Beard, followed by Robert Johnson and Delona Johnson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to figure out why the water department is inaccessible. When you have an issue, you're told that someone will call you back between 24 and 72 hours. My issue started December 20th. I got a call only after I was featured by Brad Edwards in his Getting Hosed series. I got one call from a supervisor, was never able to get her again. I received a $12,000 bill for Christmas, due December 20th. They said that this is an actual bill and that I used 107,000 gallons of water in a single-family residence where only myself and an 11-year-old live. I insisted that they come out and make sure there were no leaks outside. They came in. They said my meter was 10 years old. And then he said it's working. Okay. I disagree. When was the meter calibrated? Who calibrated it? What are the records that show where it's been calibrated? Because my bill, I've lived in the same house for 30 years. My bill has never been more than $80. So he replaced the meter. Well, it gets more interesting after that. I start to get bills from the new meter. First bill, $19. Actual. Next bill, $409. Estimate. Next bill, $134. Estimate. Why do you have to estimate my bill when you just put in a brand new meter? Isn't that what it's for? You cannot call anyone. No one calls you back. Problem, I can't fight my bills from the back end because I'm a city employee and I face discipline if I don't pay these bills. So these bills have been paid, but there's no way I used 107,000 gallons of water in 2 months. Where would it go? Someone would see that amount of water. It is the equivalent of 8 swimming pools. And me and the 11-year-old used it. No one calls you back. There's no recourse because the city owns its own water. So I can't call the AG, the IG, any of the Gs. There's no help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beard. I want to acknowledge the presence of Alderman Wagasback and Alderman Cruz and Mana Hoppenworth. Next speaker is Robert Johnson and Delona Johnson.
Hello, how are you? I'm Robert Johnson. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, who is Deloria Johnson.
Gloria, thank you.
She is 83 years of age and has had a stroke. And so we are speaking on behalf of the property at 43 25/27 South King Drive. The building was involved in a fire. However, there was a settlement agreement between the Department of Administrative Hearings, the court, to settle the water bill, as well between the Department of Administrative Hearing and my mother, in the amount of $45,355.36, which was settled on December the 2nd, 2022, is when the court order was entered. My mother ended up paying the amount of $45,355.36 on December the 21st of 2022. She ended up selling the property February the 1st of 2023. And between a 2-month period, the buyer wanted a water certification showing that the water bill was settled. And between that 2-month period, there was an additional water bill charge, a utility charge of $16,802.32. Upon sale of the building, she ended up paying $16,802.32. And she would like to be reimbursed $16,802.32 because the city of Chicago did not honor their own court agreement that was entered December the 2nd of 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Jasmine Juarez, followed by George Blakemore.
Hello everyone, my name is Yasmin Juarez. I'm here to request the end of water shutoffs due to non-payment and increased transparency on how water is billed. For example, adopting a high usage alert system like other great American cities have. DC, for example, has an app to warn customers of high water usage that monitors consumption on an hourly basis instead of a monthly average. This could save Chicagoans thousands of dollars and a headache. In May 2022, my family was billed $64,528 by the Department of Finance and Utility Billing. This was more than my annual college tuition and equivalent to 6 million gallons of water in just 2 months. For comparison, the Shedd Aquarium reportedly holds about 5 million gallons of water. I have 2 hardworking parents who, like most Chicagoans, could not take time off to dispute the bill. For 2 weeks, I called the city and would get unsympathetic replies like, well, that's what the meter reads. You probably have a massive underground leak. Would you like to sign up for a payment plan? Not once admitting that there might be a small possibility that the bill was incorrect. Unsure if we did have a leak, we frantically called 311 to report it, and the workers were more understandable. They verified that we had no leak and wished us good luck in fighting the bill and warned us about shutoffs. Desperate because we did not want to incur late fees on top of the already outrageous bill, I called Channel 2 News, and a day or two after the segment aired, I got an annoyed call from the water management leadership. And let me assure you all that if our bill had not been so unreasonable, we wouldn't be at the mercy of debt collectors. Water management continued to gaslight me. They had the audacity to ask once again if we were interested in enrolling in a payment plan. And the payment plan was higher than our monthly mortgage payments. Eventually, the bill was forgiven, and we were able to move on from the psychological terror that is planning for a water shutoff. And I'm not here for me, I am here to prevent other Chicagoans from sharing this experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Juarez. George Blakemore is our final speaker.
This is shameful. It's corrupt, fraud, and abuse. This is the Chicago. I hold all of the elected officials. And what's so egregious about this whole thing is that you won't be able to sell your property. That's the big picture. You will not, if you owe a water bill. If I owe my electric bill and I own my property, the electric company can't keep me from selling my property. That's the big picture. Waste, fraud, and abuse. And several years ago, I came to this same body about the water department. One of the most racist departments is the water department. I was just terrorized when I heard what was going on down at the water department. There's something wrong here, and I hold all you citizens responsible because you keep putting these political hacks back in office. So you at fault. You deserve the government you get, and you get the government that you deserve, the water department. This is not, and it reads on the agenda, this is just a subject matter. No legislation. They just letting you talk. Talk. The legislation have to come up to change what's going on here, to rearrange it. Is something wrong here? And it's something wrong with all of y'all and us and we to let this go on. This is your property. You paid for it. You have every right to sell it. And that's terrible. They say you can't sell it because nobody want to buy it because you owe a water bill. That's your property, and it shouldn't be connected to the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. That's what you need to do, because you need a promised land, and that promised land is to get rid of these political hacks. A city that doesn't work. Now look, there's just a few people here. This should be packed with people. There's many stories to be told about the estimate. Estimate how old I am. Estimate how black I am. Estimate how crazy I am. Who's going to judge that? And are you going to do it? Are you qualified to estimate? Are you? Estimate. Whoever heard of such nonsense? Estimate how tall I am. Big, big, big to all of y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Blakemore. There was one other speaker today, Scott Rosenweig. If you could come forward. And I'd like to acknowledge that Alderman Hopkins is also with us today.
Good morning to everyone here. I would like to thank Alderman Villegas' office for reaching out to me and letting me chime in for a few moments. Again, my name is Scott Rosenzweig. I'm a community-minded developer. I've been renovating properties since 1988 in the city of Chicago in areas which, when they started, were not getting a lot of attention, and over time have gotten better. And a lot of my organization, we've done a lot of, I like to think we've done a lot of good. We've produced a lot of affordable housing and a lot of commercial property in neighborhoods that were not getting the attention they deserved. The reason I'm speaking today is that we have a wonderful city, a city of great neighborhoods, but we have a broken system when it comes to the water department. Last year, I purchased a property at 6636 South Ingleside. When I called the water department, we were told the bill was $13,000. That was palatable for what I was buying. We went to get a full payment certificate, and when we got the full payment certificate, the water bill was $44,000. And the story basically was that the owner of the house had died, had no children, no family in Chicago, and during the polar vortex in 19, the pipes froze, and it was a metered account, which meant that we know how much water went through the system in the house. Neighbors had called because they saw water pouring outside, and nothing was done. Unfortunately, the bill, when we went to get the full payment certificate, was now $44,000, which made it untenable to renovate the property. So I paid the $44,000. I tried fighting it. I tried having the title company. I tried calling the alderman's office. I tried calling the city. And this is not my first rodeo. I've been doing this for a long time. And we got nowhere. I had to pay, as part of the contract, the open water bill, and I could not make the property work out financially, and I had to sell it. I'm working right now at 30, I believe it's 3320 Polk Street. Same story, a lady died. Squatters moved in this property. They've been there for about 4 years. The taxes have not been paid, the water's not been paid, but the water hasn't been shut off because someone is in the building, even though they're squatters, and that water bill is now $25,000. So I'm stuck with the same problem again. I think everybody in this room understands and wants to see.
Finish that up real quick.
I think everybody wants to see more affordable housing.
Thank you.
Okay.
That concludes public comment. We did receive one written public comment from Andrea. She didn't have a last name, requesting the department's assistance to rectify a high water bill statement. So today's meeting is a subject matter hearing to discuss the resolution introduced by Alderman Villegas, calling on hearings with the Department of Water and the Department of Finance. And no votes will be taken today. And we'll open it up with Alderman Villegas, who has also invited Dr. Deborah Carroll from the University of Chicago and Dr. Ann Evans from Elevate to address the committee. Their resumes were sent to everyone electronically, as well as Dr. Carroll's opening statement. I would like to also acknowledge Alderman Silverstein has joined us for quorum. Alderman Villegas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for coming in on this very important issue. You've heard from Chicagoans, $44,000, $58,000, $64,000. These are some of the bill amounts that we have heard directly from folks during the public comment, and it's very frustrating to hear these stories. I'm here today to speak on a citywide issue of water billing. Upon reading and listening to stories from CBS 2 and other media outlets that have shared concerns and shocking reports revealing unreasonable and inexplicable water bills for residents who have no plumbing issues or excessive water use, leaving many in distress and at the mercy of debt collectors. And I'd like to remind this body that in 2019, we took the steps to deal with fines and fees. Because at that time, we found out that the number one issue for bankruptcy for Chicagoans was the fines and fees from Chicago. And so here we are again with another issue that I think we need to take up and remedy. Listen, government isn't perfect, and we understand that. And I think it's incumbent upon us that once we do discover that there are issues, that we fix it. And so that's what I'm here, and that's why I call these hearings, is because we need to fix this. Our office has been inundated with calls since we've taken up this issue, and the number of stories that we've heard have just been heartbreaking. People have lost their house. People have been stressed out. Imagine government doing that to you. And that's what we've done. And I think we need to fix that immediately. I was shocked to discover how callous the city has been when dealing with water billing. Folks impacted by this have stated that the city's response is cut and dry. Quote, look, that's the bill, and we'll put you on a payment plan. And that's just like business as usual, close quote. We have to remember that we work for the residents of Chicago. As the chairman of Economic Capital and Technology Development Committee, I want to focus on how to remedy the issue with the approximately $350 million out of the capital bill that was earmarked for IT upgrades. This body passed a capital bill, and almost 10% of it was earmarked for IT upgrades. This body also conducted a IT study to show where we're at as relates to IT implementation. We did that 2 years ago. So for those that want to see the blueprint that the city has, it's called the Gardner Report. We've put forward the blueprint for IT upgrades and the funding revenue stream 2 years ago, and yet we have zero implementation in the Gardner Report and $0 have been expended to upgrade the IT. You heard one of the commenters mention about the technology. We should be looking at when someone does get a water bill that they're notified if there's unusual usage. There is technology that does it. There are other municipalities that do that now. Why aren't we doing that? We should be looking at that. Unclear billing practices and a lack of adequate technology and data sharing between the DWM and the Department of Finance continue to result in confusion, angst, and financial hardship, necessitating additional transparency. And we've got to understand, we got to remind the bureaucrats that the residents on the other end of the phone or the other end of the desk, we work for them. So we can't lose sight of that. And so we've got to figure out how to be responsible, making sure that we're not gouging the residents of the city of Chicago. Madam Chair, thank you again for taking time on this important issue. And I'd like to turn it over now to the subject matter experts that can speak a little bit more on some of the reports that they've done on this issue in Chicago.
Thank you, Alderman Villegas. I also want to mention that we're joined by Commissioner Andrea Cheng from the Department of Water Management, our acting city comptroller, Chase Rewinkle. Okay. First Deputy Director Joel Flores, Managing Deputy Director Elaine Herman, and Deputy Director Catherine Wheeler from the Department of Finance, and also Rod Warren, the Executive Director of the Department of Assets and Information and Services. So we will start with Dr. Evans first.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Ann Evans. I'm with Elevate. We are a Chicago-based nonprofit that implements clean energy and clean water programs to reduce utility bills, help the environment, and create local construction jobs. We have been working in collaboration with the city for several years on the issue of water affordability and water reconnections, including completing emergency plumbing repairs for folks who are dealing with the kind of leaks and the stories that you've heard today. We were grateful to work with the city on a water affordability report and with the Metropolitan Planning Council that looked at water utility data from 2015 through 2020. And then we conducted a second analysis. That report is public on our website. We did a second analysis to look at the impacts of COVID. We learned that water burden in Chicago is not evenly distributed. Census tracts with a majority Black, Latinx, Latino, or Latina, or Asian population face an average of higher water burden, even though we don't believe they use more water. In Chicago's lowest income census tract with the majority Black population, they're paying on average 19% of their income on water bills, which is, of course, not affordable. We also learned that non-metered customers pay on average $500 more than metered customers. We also learned that 3 and 4 unit buildings carry the highest burden. The good news is that the city rolled out the utility bill relief program a few years ago, and we've done an analysis of that. This program is working. More than 90% of customers are achieving that debt alleviation and are able to pay their bills because they're much lower. The average for UBR participation at the time we looked at it was $1,200 a month, which is, probably what an average rent or mortgage payment might be. $1,200 a year. But some debt was even higher. We've heard the $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 even higher. Those debts were relieved as well. However, we think there's more we can do. We can expand UBR to reach even more customers, and we can target UBR to those customers experiencing extreme debt. So what we recommend is that we accelerate universal metering to all residential accounts, which we know also includes lead service line replacement. We expand UBR to include renters and 3 and 4 unit buildings. We continue to reinstate households who are living without water and establish an emergency plumbing repair program. Although we have a program that's supported by philanthropy, it's relatively limited. We really need to expand it with public dollars. And we focus on targeting those folks that are experiencing this extreme stress and duress of high bills. We lean in on community-based engagement to identify folks who are struggling with these situations, and we consider looking for opt-out programs as opposed to opt-in. So rather, we know the folks that are struggling, we can look at the data, let's opt them automatically into programs like UBR. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Is it possible to get a copy of we didn't have a statement from you, but you've come up with some good recommendations. I'd like to be able to share it with the committee. Thank you. Dr. Carroll.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Deborah Carroll, and I'm director of the Government Finance Research Center, as well as professor and head of the Department of Public Policy, Management, and Analytics in the College of Urban Planning and Public Affairs at the University of Illinois, Chicago. The mission of the Government Finance Research Center, which we affectionately call the GFRC, is to shape and inform public policy and scholarly discourse on government and public finance by identifying, planning, and executing research, providing reports and informed analyses, delivering educational opportunities and technical training, and offering inclusive venues to convene national and local discussions on fiscal and governance issues. Since January 2022, I have been leading a team of researchers within the GFRC to investigate and report on municipal water rate setting throughout the state of Illinois. This water rate setting study was authorized by the Illinois General Assembly through Public Act 101-562, approved in 2019, and amended by Public Act 102-507, approved by Governor Pritzker in 2021, and was appropriated as part of the American Rescue Plan Act Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund. As specified in the legislation, the study addresses 7 critical purposes, including the components of a water bill, reasons for increases in water rates, the definition of affordability throughout the state and any variances to that definition, evidence of rate setting that utilizes inappropriate practices, the extent to which state or local policies drive cost increases or variations in rate setting, challenges within economically disadvantaged communities in setting water rates, and opportunities for increased intergovernmental coordination for setting equitable rates and increasing access to drinking water for residents of economically disadvantaged communities. The 3-year project is being conducted in 2 phases. In June of this year, we successfully completed phase 1 and submitted to the Illinois General Assembly a nearly 180-page report of our research findings and policy recommendations for the Lake Michigan service area in the northeastern region of the state, including the city of Chicago. Currently, we are working on the 2nd phase of the project to produce a report for the remainder of the state. The report itself and a series of accompanying policy briefs, along with all of the data sources that we used for the first report, can be found on our website, gfrc.uic.edu. If you look under featured projects, we have a separate web page for the water rate setting study that includes all of that information. And I'm happy to answer any questions here today from this esteemed committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. Can you repeat the website, please?
It's gfrc.uic.edu. Under featured projects, you'll see a web page, a project site web page for the water rate setting study. And that includes the full 180-page report, a series of 2-page policy briefs, because it is a quite lengthy report. So the policy briefs are much easier to ingest the information and data sources that we used for our research.
Thank you very much. And before we open it up to the floor for the committee members, I would like to have Commissioner Cheng and our Comptroller, Chase Rehnquinkel, speak to this issue.
Sure, thank you. And thank you to the experts for their reports, which have been very illuminating to me as well. Chair Dowell, Chair Villegas, distinguished members of the Committee on Finance, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present on the topic of water bills, a primary issue for the Department of Finance to both review and ameliorate. My name is Chase Rehnquinkel, and I have had the honor of serving as the acting City Comptroller for nearly 2 months now. In that short time, I have made it a priority to schedule meetings with as many members of City Council as possible. I have met with many of you, and to those I haven't, I know we will meet soon. Across these meetings, nearly every member of this body has made it clear to me that unexpected and unreasonable increases in water bills are a major concern for Chicago residents and must be dealt with swiftly. I share your concern and commit to this body that the Department of Finance will work diligently with City Council, our sister departments, and impacted Chicago residents to address this issue so that Chicagoans are not burdened by unexpected water bills. A surprise jump in water costs should not cause any Chicagoan to think about leaving their home or moving their business. As the committee is aware, there are 2 types of water billing for Chicago residents, metered and non-metered. Non-metered bills are calculated based on a series of factors including building size, lot size, and other fixtures. Non-metered bills typically are the same every month, meaning that sudden jumps in high-cost water bills are quite uncommon. However, a non-metered bill can increase if the nature of the property changes, e.g. a single-family home becomes a 2-flat, etc. Additionally, is it important for non-metered vacant properties to register as vacant with the Department of Buildings so that the Department of Water Management can shut off water services and the Department of Finance can stop billing. For metered accounts, a number of factors could lead to spike in water bills. Running toilets, broken pipes inside the home, broken service lines between the building and the B-box, burst pipes in the winter, even excess outdoor water usage in the summer can cause large, unexpected jumps in cost. Additionally, metered accounts are sometimes estimated between meter readings. If a leak or increased usage occurs between meter readings, then the true-up of the cost post-meter reading can sometimes be very high, possibly many tens of times the bill that the resident is used to paying. There are other issues as well, including those related to installation of the meter, causing the meter to effectively run in reverse. It is also possible that reading itself was incorrect. I can firmly commit that for these scenarios, my office will do its very best to correct any charges determined to be inaccurate in a timely manner. A core mission of the Department of Finance is to collect revenue on behalf of the city in order to provide the resources necessary for the city to meet the needs of its residents. Collecting revenue based on inaccurate billing runs counter to this mission and should not be part of the city's collection process. However, for those customers that see a spike in water bill because of a leak or other water usage, it is still concerning to see large and unexpected spikes. It is important to note that in the Municipal Code 11-12-460 requires the Department of Finance to charge and collect for all water passing through a meter, specifically prohibiting the department from making any deduction for water lost through a leak, accident, or waste of the water. Despite this barrier, over the past few years, the department has worked to provide more options for residents struggling to pay their water bill. The Utility Billing Relief Program, UBR, provides eligible participants with roughly 50% reduction in what they currently pay for utility services. In addition to reducing homeowners' utility charges, the UBR program offers residents debt relief. Those participants who reach their enrollment 1-year anniversary date and remain current in their payments will have their previous unpaid city utility debt forgiven. Also, in July 2022, the City Council approved a change to the municipal code that removed authority to shut water service off for residential properties due to non-payment. In addition, the department has expanded the online billing portals so that Chicagoans can more easily view and pay bills, apply for full payment certificates, or enter payment plan. These reforms have made it easier for Chicagoans struggling to pay their water bills, but our work in this area is far from complete. The department would like to work with City Council to reasonably expand the UBR program to include at least 3 flat dwellings, as well as devise a suite of policy tools that include extending payment plan terms to make monthly payments more affordable, a penalty relief program, a hardship committee, and the creation of water bill appeals hearing process so that the city can more effectively address these unusual and dramatic spikes in water bills. I look forward to working with you all on improving our system so that we continue to meet our obligations, but also avoid onerous and unexpected billing increases. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Comptroller. Commissioner Cheng.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Dowell, Chairman Villegas, and members of the Committee on Finance. I am Dr. Andrea Chang, Commissioner of the Department of Water Management, DWM, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to appear before you today. Our presence here is to shed light on the intricate dynamics of meter reading and water billing in Chicago. The mission of the 2,000 women and men of the Department of Water Management is to ensure that we deliver high-quality drinking water to residents. We don't ever want residents to fear that using that water will result in sudden large increases in water bills. We are here today with the Department of Finance as our departments have related but discrete roles in water billing. In 2010, Finance took over all water billing responsibilities for DWM, and DWM maintains the water and sewer infrastructure, including the meters used to measure the water flow, whereas Finance uses that data to bill the residents and handle billing-related customer service. With almost 500,000 active water billing accounts, 494,000, serving 5.3 million people, Chicago is one of the largest water utilities in the U.S. That's a lot of accounts to maintain and manage. But let me take a moment to explain how the water infrastructure and meters work in relationship to the water billing. Water flows from the large mains in the street through small water service lines that are controlled by a shutoff valve known as a buffalo box or B-box. Typically, the water service line continues into the front portion of a home's basement where a water meter, if present, is located. In some cases, the meter is located within a below-ground vault in front of the home. So even if no water is being used, that infrastructure has to be maintained by DWM. DWM is responsible for purchasing, installing, testing, repairing, and reading these water meters. We have one here today just to kind of get so everyone can see what they look like. Water meters consist of a measuring chamber on the bottom, a register on the top that has a dial that shows the usage in gallons, and a transmitter. Since 2007, DWM has been using what is called AMR meters, or automated meter reading. The meter's transmitter sends out a signal every 4 to 10 seconds that's picked up by a DWM vehicle that's driving down the street. Each route is read once per month, and then the usage data is uploaded into the Banner billing system by a third-party vendor. DWM remotely reads over 310,000 meters each month. And before AMR, meters were read manually by staff who actually had to enter homes. As water flows through that measuring chamber, it moves a rotating disc, and those rotating disc meters are the standard type of meter for the water industry. But it's important to note that meters measure all the water that flows through them, meaning that leaks upstream of a meter are not measured, but leaks downstream of a meter or closer to the house are measured. So eventually, small residential water meters should be replaced as they can potentially slow down, reducing accuracy, and their transmitters can reach the end of their battery life. Larger meters, however, can be tested and recalibrated and rebuilt rather than replaced. Finance handles most customer service complaints, and if needed, they will set up an appointment to have a DWM crew investigate those meters. That investigation might involve replacing the meter and bringing the original back to our meter shop for testing, checking for leaks, or downloading a detailed hourly water usage profile to look for when an increase in water usage was detected. DWM uses a state-of-the-art meter tester in our meter shop. The results of those investigations are then entered into Banner for review by the Department of Finance. The AMR system also provides automatic detection of what's called running continuous, or RC, and no radio frequency, NRF, codes, which can help diagnose issues. RC codes trigger letters to residents when there's prolonged usage, helping customers identify potential leaks. Whereas NRF codes could indicate that a proper signal was not received by the DWM vehicle driving by, which can sometimes happen if something like a large garbage truck is interfering with signal transmission. And if an NRF code is received, an estimated bill rather than actual bill is generated for that month. Installing a water meter saves money and allows for early detection of leaks, which is important in avoiding unexpected large water bills and keeping water affordable for residents. A further safety net is the 7-year guarantee that was included for residents that were part of the Meter Save water billing installation program, wherein their bill could be no higher than what it would be if they were still non-metered. 136,000 meters were installed with the Meter Save program from 2009 to 2022. As recommended by the Water Affordability Study by Elevate Energy, DWM continues to install meters in our drive for equity and affordability. Due to a change in state law, however, as of January 2023, meters are installed as a part of every lead service line replacement. In addition, residential water shutoffs due to non-payment were banned in 2018. However, moving forward, we are committed to modernizing the AMR meter reading system and the legacy Banner billing system. Modern options allow residents greater access for water usage data and provide automated alerts for abnormal usage, like the app that was mentioned. We look forward to continuing our partnership with the Department of Finance and City Council to ensure that every resident has access to safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to acknowledge Alderman Taliaferro, who's joined us and will be counted towards quorum. We'll start with questions from the members of the committee, beginning with Alderman Cicha Lopez.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Dowell. And first, let me thank you and commend you for this important hearing. Also to Alderman Villegas for making it happen. Before I start with some important questions, I think it's important to put into context how we got to this place. The costs, and I think to all the residents who came in to testify and many others who are not here, are astronomical. We have, as we have heard by testimony, people who are losing their homes out of these practices. And a specific, agendas here for interests that benefit by this chaos in the city of Chicago. We have in our ward at least, a sub kitchen that is struggling to stay open, and many other residents with really, really troubling facts, just as we heard today. So this issue is major and affects many of the most vulnerable communities in the city of Chicago. How do we get here? So I think I want to put into context that the Rahm Emanuel administration decided to increase costs of sewage and water bills to pay for infrastructure projects. I do think that it's critical that we look at this issue really carefully, because I understand that, as we mentioned, and as someone mentioned in the testimony, to qualify for a water bill or water meter, they need to qualify first for a lead replacement line. In the city of Chicago, we have the worst problem in the country for that. We need 390,000 lines to be replaced. That is a massive, massive problem. The other thing, of course, is the issues that we had with billing. I think in the last account, at the end of the last year, was about $469 million in debt that many of our constituents in the south side, west side, in the poorest areas of the city are struggling with. So My first question in terms of, because I don't want to dismiss this is a big issue, it's important to put it into context. The previous administration committed to have an aggressive program to address this issue, yet it didn't happen, I guess, in the goals that they had in mind. So my line of questioning will be first starting there. What we've done since last time, and I know that there were some goals, at least by the end of 2022, that were met, that were put in place. So my first question has to do, at least with a very minimum. I know that we have 390,000 service lines that need to be replaced. But at least the previous administration committed to replace 600 of them at a cost of $50 million. That would be my first question. What progress have we made on the goals that the water department has set to achieve? And also, maybe from the controller, maybe in terms of billing, I mean, what we heard today is simply unacceptable. So first I want to see infrastructure-wise and the goals, and then maybe especially around billing, what we're doing to make sure that this does not happen to anyone. My apologies on behalf of the City of Chicago for the residents who are dealing with these atrocities.
Alderman Cicho Lopez, I just want to make sure for this hearing, the subject matter hearing is focused primarily on billing.
Yes,
We're
correct.
not focusing on lead service replacement lines. Today, I would like you to keep your questions focused on the billing issue, but we will go with the one answer that you are looking for. I want to acknowledge Alderman Curtis has joined us, Alderman Mosley, and Alderman Taliaferro.
Thank you, Chairman.
Certainly. Thank you, Alderman, for the question. So addressing lead service line replacement program specifically, the 600 a year goal you cite, that is for our equity lead service line replacement program. That's correct. We also have 5 other lead service line replacement programs for a total of 4,500 for this year for our goal, and then continuing to increase up to about 9,000 a year in the coming years to continue to ramp up. To get rid of all of the lead service line replacements. And of course, as a part of each one of those, a meter is installed if there's not one there, or replaced if it's old. And so we continue to recognize the importance of of getting those meters in and funding those lead service line replacements, because it also impacts affordability.
Speaking to billing, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking to billing, I agree. So. So in terms of jumps in water, the items we heard today, we do get those. I would say they're rare, but every ward experiences them in this way. So we get roughly 350,000 different bills, charges coming in a month, and in a given month, about 500 on average will be jumps of over 5 times what the previous bill is. So in the context of all of the bills, it's a small number, but to each of those individuals, that's a huge price that they have to bear. And and my commitment to you in this body in coming here is to work on that group specifically. Now, we should be working on discussions about how we're billing in all of our areas of the city to make sure we're doing it in a fair and balanced way. But for those specific group of individuals, even in legitimate situations, that's a shock to everyone. If I go from $50 to $12,000 in 1 month. And in the grand scheme of our revenue structure, it represents a tiny part of what we bring in. So of the $1.2 billion that we're bringing in total in water, they represent somewhere in the average of 8 to 10 million a year. 8 to 10 million is still a lot of money, but to the individuals specifically, that's a ton of money for them to burden an area that the city isn't dependent on revenue-wise. So the provision within the statute, I'm sure, was originally put in there so that there can't be just mass forgiveness of water, which we do use for our bonding services, but there are ways that we can look at what other cities have done to mitigate those factors so that these jumps and these shocks shouldn't become part of our revenue structure, nor should they be kind of an everyday or a possibility for the residents here. It's not something that is acceptable, and we should be working toward solutions, which is why we'd like to work toward expanding UBR, as well as looking at different appeals pieces, other relief programs so that those can be mitigated.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I got a follow-up question, and I appreciate the clarification. I know these issues are interconnected. We're focusing on billing for today. In particular, my biggest concern, and this affects even housing, right? I mean, the city has gotten to the point that we have issues developing affordable housing because we are not able to provide a certificate that the city owns money to itself so that we can build affordable housing. That's how pervasive and bad these issues are. So my question is especially around low-income homeowners, and again, the programs to relieve on that. $460 million is a huge number, right? It is really focusing and is really burdening the most vulnerable residents. We hear people losing their homes are billing. I think that's unacceptable. We put in burden on nonprofits that are trying to provide a service, and there's no recourse, as we heard, other than sign up for the payment plan. What other recourse we can have to make sure that there's equity in our actions, because right now it is really putting unfair burden in the most vulnerable?
Yes, I agree. When I came into office, my directive in coming here was to make sure that our revenue structure was both equitable and fair to the residents of the city of Chicago. We should not have our revenue stream based on fines and fees. Fines and fees are necessary to correct behavior. They're not necessary to fund the city of Chicago. We should make sure that we're reviewing our revenue structure so that we're handling the issues that are most important to the people that live here, regardless of what neighborhood you're from or kind of what needs that neighborhood has. So in terms of low-income housing, I know that Alderman Martin had brought to me when visited him that issue, and that's something I very much would like to work with you on as well, Alderman. But I agree, we need to look at all these different pieces to make sure the debt that's coming in, that we're handling that in the appropriate way to make sure that the city's still working for its residents, but it's not overburdening them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I just thought we'd end with this. In our community, right, we have seen the effects of displacement in multiple ways. But the hardest thing to accept is what we heard in the testimony today, that someone has to sell their home, right, and then ask city council for a reimbursement later. I do think that needs to change. And I know that this is not the focus for today on the lead replacement, but what we heard today that isn't connected, and that's what brought the history of it. When we are tying fines and fees to revenue, here's where we find ourselves. And this was one administration, two administrations before. And the other thing that I think is really critical is to really find that these cases, I don't know how many, if you have information about how many people are burdened in this line in terms of losing their home or getting into debt that we're putting in financial and including bankruptcy. My question would be how these these programs that you're promoting, how much funding, we're about to enter budget season. Is there any estimates in terms of how much we help, we can commit to?
Yeah, and so just speaking on just the UBR expansion, just to 3 flats, we would estimate that would cost the city in revenue about $1.7 million a year. And that's a price, I think, that at least from my office, we're willing to work with in order to help the people that are burdened by those debts. It kind of restructures and how we're funding things, so it's not that expensive to us to consider expansions to that program. In the same way as I was describing the small number that have those spikes, if we look at that problem specifically, in the grand total of our revenue collection, it's a small amount. And what that says to me is we are not dependent on that revenue, and we can come up with solutions together to make sure that those folks are not being overly burdened. It pains me every time I hear somebody say, I went from $70 to $68,000, and now that property is toxic. No one wants to touch it, hard to sell. We should be able, since that is revenue that isn't major to the city of Chicago, I want to clarify that, but also we should be working toward making sure that property can become more available to the person who's there, and that we handle those issues that are coming up for those individuals.
Thank you, Controller. And I look forward, I know like at the end of 2021, we propose to use some federal funds to coordinate these efforts. There was about 30 members of the council who supported this to prioritize equity and decisions to relieve, especially low-income homeowners. This affects housing tremendously. In a time where preserving natural occurring affordable housing, and where we put seniors out there in the court, I think in the city, I think that we need to do better. I'm really hopeful that under the leadership of Chairman Dow, we can make this a priority, and I look forward to working together. Maybe there's a spirit. We have proposals that we like to review because there's a lot of time to gain here, and thank you again, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Alderman Cicho Lopez. Comptroller, how many accounts, additional accounts, would that expansion take in, you think?
That's the. I can get that for you. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we'll make sure that we get it to you.
Just curious if you had a number.
I didn't have it for you.
Vice Chair Conway, followed by Alderman Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd first like to thank Alderman Villegas for your leadership on this issue, as well as Channel 2 for bringing this, really bringing this to the forefront, and also Chairwoman Dow for convening these hearings. It sounds like there are really, 3 buckets of problems listening to all of you and listening to some of the speakers. One of them is sort of there's a leak and the people don't know. It's kind of bucket 1. Bucket 2 is like an unauthorized use. We heard about a squatter on the premises from one of the speakers. But then it seems like there's a third bucket where it's just wrong. One of the speakers mentioned after an investigation that the water bill was forgiven. And to focus on that third bucket for a minute, I would ask, I'd ask the distinguished members, how does that happen and what can we do to solve it? And I don't know if it's on the water department side or on the finance department side. So my questions would be, Dr. Chang, when your office has gone out to do an investigation and then subsequently forgiven the water bill, what really happened in that situation there where that happened, and Comptroller Ray Winkle, if you would like to, you can opine on that as well. And
thank you, Alderman. So yeah, when we, if it turns out that there is something actually, wrong with the bill, it could be a lot of different things. It could be like what I was talking about earlier, the reads are dependent on getting that signal, which is a radio frequency signal, from the meter to the truck. If there's an issue with an interference and we end up estimating, that could be one of the issues. And if there's something where, I know we had one case where it was actually an empty building and it was the dial, the register was at zeros, and something happened, maybe some shaking, and it kicked to 9999, it was right on that edge. Okay, clearly, it was an unoccupied building. We were able to fix that and see that. But, some of those things are why we're talking about, going to the new meter read system, because there are more modern options now. We did just install that system starting in 2007, but technology moves fast. So, more modern ones use cellular reads instead of radio frequency and what's called a fixed network as opposed to mobile, so we don't need to drive by. It eliminates some of those potential areas for either human error or transmission error, in addition to building that transparency. So usually it's on those sort of issues that it's related to either transmission or human error in that process.
And, just on the finance side, out of those 3 buckets, and I think that's a good way of structuring it, Alderman, of the spikes, the just a mistake seems to be the least often.
Okay.
They happen though, and we hear about it. On the finance side, well, we want to make sure that we're structuring, not so much on the water reading side, is that we can get faster at relieving those issues when it's clearly a mistake. I hate hearing stories about people that it was clearly a mistake and then that doesn't get forgiven for 6 months, a year, that sort of process. We can get stronger at that and also make sure that we're strong. And when we send out our bills, that it's very clear about what's going on. we can look at some other utility bills like our ComEd and things and how they present information to make sure that people understand what's going on.
Great. Well, thank you both. And it seems like what we can do to speed up the conversion to cellular meters may solve some of these issues. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. A question on Commissioner Chang. How much would it cost to change over to that cellular system? And how long do you think it would take to implement such a system?
We're figuring that out right now. I don't have a number. We're literally in the process of the RFI right now. So I'll see if we can get a bracketed value for you. But it will take a couple of years. With that many, number of meters to switch out, we'll switch out the meter and the type of transmitter. So we'll phase it. And we'll have to look at which ones we prioritize, whether it's the oldest first or ones where maybe we've had billing issues before, or issues getting the transmitter, maybe we'll do those first. But when we did it originally, when we switched from manual meters to AMR in 2007, it took about 2 to 3 years ish, and we did it geographically at that point in time. So we'll be looking to figure out the most efficient way.
And do you anticipate that we'll see any of this movement in the upcoming budget? Is this something you're trying to bake into our 2024 budget?
Yeah, it'll be part of our capital budget. So we'll be looking to see as we get our arms around how much that is going to cost for the meter read system, separate from the banner. The banner billing system upgrade is part of that IT money that's already set aside, but for the meter reading, that'll come out of our capital budget. So we'll be seeing where we squeeze that into our CIP.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Taylor, followed by Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How many customers do we have in the city of Chicago that are without water?
Thank you, Alderman, for that question. So it's a little bit hard to say because we have some non-metered folks. So if their water has been shut off or requested to be shut off, we don't always know that. But for the number that we had during COVID, we focused on getting them reconnected through our program that we work on with Department of Finance and Elevate, our reconnection program, to trying to reach out anyone who had previously been shut off before the shut-offs ended, to see if they wanted their water turned back on, and kind of give them wraparound services. Finance helps getting them in UBR, and Elevate helps if they needed internal plumbing. So we've actually expanded that now and are working on a contract to continue to work on those internal plumbing issues, because often if somebody is still at this point without water, it's because they have an internal plumbing issue that they can't afford to fix. So we need this new contract so we can help in that respect, because sometimes you turn on that B-box and then it just starts leaking on the inside and you have to turn it right back off.
So through the chair, can we get that number? Can you tell me how many counties or municipalities owe the city of Chicago money?
We can get that number as well.
Alderman Taylor, looking for communities that owe the city of Chicago?
Absolutely, because I find it real funny that these counties and other folks have been owing us money for years for water, and they're not disconnected, but y'all disconnecting the citizens we're paid to represent, and so that's problematic. And so I want the numbers. I want to see how many people in the city of Chicago water is off versus these municipalities that aren't paying us. We had that whole conversation during budget season last year. Does anybody remember? I do. And so we're not getting paid from those municipalities, but we're not cutting off their water, but we're cutting off a senior who ultimately y'all could have got their water bill wrong. And the thought that y'all bold enough to say on here, you must pay the total amount due immediately or into a payment plan, or you'll have a debt referral, wage garnishment, property liens, personal judgment, and suspension of city licenses. Even if y'all make the mistake, does not seem, though, that 2 + 2 does not equal 4. And so you all need to ultimately fix it. Everything that we heard from the folks who came to testify today, you all have 2 big issues. Customer service, y'all suck. Y'all don't answer the phone. Nobody's able, a lot of this could be taken care of if you all would just answer the phone. And people shouldn't have to come to the alderman's office to get us to intercede when you all could just answer the phone. That's problem number one. Number two, if y'all took somebody's city license over a mistake, I hope they sue y'all. I honestly hope they sue y'all, because you're saying to us the problem seems to be the water and the meter. How do you know that? When are people notified? Why do you wait until they get these $187,000 bills before you say it's something wrong with your meter? The water is leaking. It seems like y'all are not taking the position that y'all have very seriously. Water is a human right. There should not be anybody in the city of Chicago without water, period. But we just signed a contract to get, what was it, Joliet? Who was it? Somebody, Joliet Water. I would love to see if they don't pay their bill, what happens? Are you going to cut off that city? Like, we got to do stuff different, and we got to think about the people that we're paid to represent. And so, for me, this is common sense. Some of this is easy fix. Why is everybody not getting a meter? I keep hearing this story, you got to call, you should do this. No, though, if those meters need to be replaced because they're in a bad position, just replace them. I don't understand why people got to call y'all to say, come change the meters, when y'all know they defective. You said it yourself, y'all own words, it's something wrong with the meters. But then you got people who get a $200,000 water bill and can't afford it. Then I lose my license, I could lose my business. I can't even sell my home because of y'all mistake. That's on y'all. You see how that's not a constituent problem? That's on the water department. And so I can't wait till budget season to see what y'all asking to spend, because I don't know what you're doing with the money we're giving you now. Based on all of these people who stood here with their bills saying they don't know why their bill went from $100 to $4,000, and nobody can answer down at the water department or finance. Y'all don't have a call center? I hope y'all asking for that in the budget. That's all I got, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just want to follow up on this. Maybe we can get an answer from the question on replacing faulty meters. How does that occur? Is that automatic? Commissioner Chang. Commissioner Chang, the question was about replacing faulty meters. How does that occur? And if you could also speak to what happens when people have leaks, is that something that you all automatically notify people of?
Yeah, so we only read meters once a month, but if we see what's that RC code that I mentioned, the running continuous code, we'll send out a letter to small residential properties saying, hey, you might have a leak. Now, it might be that they're actually using their water, consistently. Maybe they're, putting in sod, I don't know. But we want to let them know, hey, heads up, check for your property, there might be a leak. But if, sometimes it happens where they, hire a plumber doesn't see a leak, then they might call 311 or call finance and say, hey, I think something's going on. You all are seeing an RC code, we don't see a leak. And that's when we would send out an investigator. And if I can, I'd love to have our Deputy Commissioner, Mike Grillo, talk about in detail what we do during that investigation.
Good morning.
Can you please identify yourself for the record and your position?
Mike Grillo, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Water Management. So as far as when we investigate a meter leak, first step is if a customer calls customer service, they have a complaint, Department of Finance customer service will triage that. They will create the service order. I'm sorry, can you hear me? They will triage that call. They will create a service order to send us out to take a look at that meter. So the things that we do a physical check on the meter, make sure it's not leaking. We can download some information off the transmitter, which we can create a report to send out. If it comes down to it, we will pull that meter out, replace it with a new one, test that meter back at the shop, put the results in the system, and then we coordinate with Department of Finance on the results.
Thank you. Comptroller?
I wanted to first say we'll make sure we get all of the numbers on the shutoffs as well as the additional municipalities that Alderman Taylor requested, to make sure that she has that and everyone on committee. I wanted to say, so I've only worked here for 2 months, but I've worked in government a long time, and the frustration I often hear in government from residents is, I know you have the information. Why are you making me guess? Why am I not getting that information? And a lot of the situation that we come into as agency heads is that there are, it is difficult. Maybe we need to have additional staffing or different technology or other items to make sure that we're providing those services. But it's incumbent on us, our job, to be transparent with the people that we work with, that we work for, to make sure that they understand what's happening with their bill. So what I'm hopeful for is, in talking with my team, we have a lot of folks that are very interested in getting at the issue that Alderman Taylor rose there, is making sure that if there is an issue, that person knows exactly what the problem is from a finance side, what their options are to fix it, and that they're already started down that path to fix the issue. And if there are mitigating factors where we don't understand what's going on, it's incumbent on us on the finance side to make sure that we're explaining those to those residents. So as we have these issues come up, I do want to work with City Council on how we can strengthen that, but it's my commitment that we will work on improving how our bills look, how we're putting out notices, what other communications we have, all of our different forms of communication, so that we're taking best practices from other cities, other sectors, other utilities, to make sure we're doing the best we can.
Thank you. Alderman Rodriguez, followed by Alderman Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Alderman Villegas, for putting this together and doing your homework here and bringing this example that's before us. You know, it's not uncommon in my office. I should restate that it's quite too common in my office that we receive from both businesses and residents alike bills as egregious as what we're seeing in front of us today. So we know it's happening in all parts of the city, and we've got to do better. I'm particularly interested in a line of questioning that Alderman Taylor was going down as it relates to our assistance to the public. This could potentially be a through the chair request, but I want to get a real understanding of the process in which constituents go through once they come from our office to the water department, and how, if there is an absolute egregious bill increase, how they are serviced, what's the front lines, how we go about supporting to verify whether bills are accurate or not. I feel like this request is clear, and if I need to get it even clearer, I could.
No, I think the request is clear. I also think it's not just people who come to our office, but people who try to access the Department of Water Management or the Department of Finance on their own.
And I was about to go there because I think the line of questioning as well from Alderwoman Taylor was quite clear as well regarding the fact that people make these calls. I'd like to know, are those city employees that respond to those calls? How quickly they get responded to. We need to have metrics on this. So if we have some of those answers now, I'd love to hear some of them now, but at the very least, I would like to see some of the data on this through the chair. But I would be curious if we can have some initial response, and I have one more question after this.
Okay, thank you. Comptroller, is that, I think,
From our team, kind of walk through how we do the outreach side, and
right,
I don't know
and it would be helpful if we could get through the chair like a flow chart.
Okay, we can work on that. Would you like to just briefly go over?
Yes, I would like you to answer Alderman Rodriguez's question, but I would like to get the same information in writing for all the colleagues.
Absolutely.
While she's approaching, just on the flow chart, I like the idea, and I'd like to know how many staff are assigned to each of these points and whether there's any outsourcing of any of this work.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we had come up with some flow charts on a lot of our warning stuff for like the vehicle pieces, so we'll try to come up with something similar so that everyone has it, and then all of the city council can.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Catherine Wheeler. I'm the Deputy Director over Utility Billing and Customer Service in the Department of Finance. With respect to taking incoming customer questions and complaints, we do have a call center. We also receive input from customers via email. With respect to the call center, we currently have 31 call takers taking calls. With respect to email, we currently have 7 individuals receiving and responding to emails. The first line customer service experience is with an outsourced vendor. After the first level customer experience, if that first level can't resolve the issue immediately and additional analysis is needed, that is done by city staff. And there's a total of 24 city staff in our division reviewing accounts, reviewing billing before it goes out, adjusting accounts if an issue is found with the billing. Last year, we received in the call center just short of 260,000 calls. This year, so far, I believe this is through June, we received about 149,000 calls. And our call wait time last year averaged about 7 minutes and 20 seconds. This year, we've made great improvements, and it's averaging 1 minute and 35 seconds. And if I didn't address a part of your question, I think you had additional questions about how do we deal with disputes once they come in. So Mike Grillo from Water Management spoke to part of that already. If there's an issue with a meter, we do set up appointments for meter inspections and replacements for the Department of Water Management and work closely with them on that. Once the information comes back in from the field, we review those service orders and ensure that the billing was correct, or if we determine it was incorrect, we correct it. So typically with a meter situation, if they're replacing the meter, we'll have information from a service order that we review. Typically, a meter reading is also taken at that time, and certainly if the meter is replaced, we will receive the final reading off the meter. Mike also mentioned that they do meter testing at the meter shop and that we have access to those records showing the test results, so we review those as well before coming to a final determination about whether the account was correctly billed or not.
And if there's other pieces that we need, we'll make sure that we follow up to that. Were there additional questions?
Yeah, just on another topic, just on new technologies. I just want to caution the body and all, the commissioner's been out with us as well as others from the water department on what I would just call a model block as far as the replacement of leaded service lines. We've noticed a lot of reticence, particularly from some homeowners, to new technologies. And we need to remain vigilant and mindful of that reticence and getting over that. I think there's been some creative ways to address that, particularly assuring kind of no increases on water bills in some cases. But communication is key. Communication in native languages is key. Communication up front is key. And we even saw that, free lead service line replacements weren't being accepted by some of our constituents, particularly because their lack of confidence in government, right? I think that's one of the reasons. There might be others. So we've got a long way ahead of us, even getting folks on board in believing in the changes in technology. So I just want to caution the body and make sure that that's a key strategy in moving forward with our constituents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Rodriguez. Alderman Taylor, you had a point of information.
Who are we outsourcing these calls to? Why is there an outsourced vendor? She said that it's a call center and it's an outsourced vendor.
Yes.
Why and who are we outsourcing?
I wasn't here for the original time that is. I can go research that and I'll get back to you right away. I can tell you when I worked for the state, we had some vendors because that ended up actually being more efficient for certain items, but then we went away from outside vendors when it became too onerous on the system as a whole. So I'll investigate that and make sure that we have a correct answer for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We can get that information to everyone through the chair. Alderman Moore, followed by Alderman Cardona and Hall.
Thank you. Chairman Villegas, thank you for bringing this matter to the council, and thank you, Chairman Dow, for hearing this here. First question that I have, and I just want to make sure the senior that came up with her son, is someone addressing her issue? Is someone working with her?
I will tell you that we're taking notes on all of that. If we're not currently addressing it, we will address it immediately.
Make sure somebody get with them, and then I would like a follow up.
Yep, absolutely.
When it's finalized. So someone make sure from the department get with them today. Make sure you have their information and making sure that her concerns are being addressed. And I'd like to know the outcome of that. My second one, and it's something that you mentioned, and I appreciate it, appeals. I'm reminded just from working at the Board of Review from a tax standpoint, whether you forget to pay your taxes or there's some erroneous stuff, you could have had a vacant home and then you go back 3 years or whatever and you can appeal. What are we doing? Is there a process now? Because especially as the ones that I get a lot are my house has been vacant mostly, or I haven't had a tenant there. And if somebody can produce evidence as we produce at the Board of Review to get whether it's going back 3 years, for some type of refund or correction, what are we doing now, or is that just a hope that you can get to doing appeals?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. So currently, we take in information if additional information becomes available, whether it's through the resident or some other factors that gets factored in, and then we're kind of bound by statute on what are at our means to be able to rectify the issue. So statutorily, we can't forgive items if it's an actual leak. If there is some extenuating circumstance where it's clearly erroneous or there's something else, that we can address. But what I'd like to work with City Council and obviously our sister agencies and residents is maybe more of an appeal process, so that some of those items where, yes, water was used, but it was extreme and there's extenuating circumstances where it would seem unreasonable to the individual, and to everyone involved, that should be the full amount, or things like that, whether we could go back on smoothing, the last 3 or 4 bills to make sure that works. Those sort of items to have that toolkit, so that situations where you have the extreme water bill, even if the water was there, but that there was some sort of mitigating factor that we can all agree to, that's something we'd like to work with you on.
So based on what you just said, and I appreciate that, right now, is there a set process in terms of appeals? And if so, is there is just that appeal section, or is whoever gets it then try to do it, and is that consistent?
There's no formal appeal process. If there's an issue that can't be rectified early on, it gets elevated to the division management staff to kind of work through those specific issues. We're actually talking about a fairly small overall. It's a large amount, but a small compared to the amount of bills we send out. So we can try to work through a lot of those individually. So when there are mitigating factors that we can take into account, we will. But there's no formal process for making sure that we are hitting all of those particular issues.
And I think you hit on that. I think we really should consider one and work on doing one. And I'd like to see how that So
you on that.
So my last one, and as the commissioner said, and I can attest to it, and that's in terms of sending letters out. But I have to say, I don't know how consistent that is. So I need to know how consistent that is, because under the Emmanuel administration, and because of the way my toilet was and I had to get it fixed, you flush it and then it won't go up. I used to get a letter all the time. Like, your toilet had been running for the last 24 or 48 hours. And like, whoa, And so I had to get it fixed based on that. It's happened again a few times, and I have not been receiving that letter. So I want to know, has that stopped? Is there an inconsistency somewhere, or what?
Thank you, Alderman. Yeah, so what the way the RC code works is if your water has been running at least 2 hours in the 24 hours prior to when the meter is read, that's what triggers it. So it's possible that your water could have been running intermittently, say, for maybe an hour and a half. Or maybe it exceeds the 2-hour threshold. And sometimes it could be legitimate, right? You might be doing a ton of laundry or something where you actually have a lot of water being used for a while. So that's how it measures it. So the toilet running is usually pretty consistent, right? It's kind of always running or running pretty regularly. So usually that would trigger an RC code. But if you had legitimate usage or maybe just an intermittent leak, you might not get them every month. But every time that we see that trigger, that's when a letter is sent out.
So you only see that trigger when there's a read? I was assuming that it was you all were noticing something without somebody coming and reading.
Yeah, no. Our new system that we'd like to get would be more like that, when we'd have reads that are more like hourly or daily. But with us only reading once a month, when we get that read, that's when that RC would be triggered.
Okay.
Yeah.
It
was great technology at the time. There's other options now. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Alderman Cardona, followed by Hall, Alderman Hall, followed by Alderman Vasquez, and then we'll close with Alderman Villegas.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Excuse me, Alderman Cruz, I got you.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Alderman Spizzato, I did not count you towards quorum, but I will. And, okay, got you.
Ready? Okay. Thank you, Chairwoman, for this, and also Alderman Villegas for talking about the bills and so forth. I have a couple questions. I know that on the bill, as you can see, if a senior qualifies, a senior who has a single-family home, what are the credits that they get discounted, or any, if they do? So, seniors that have their own home, senior exemptions. If you get a senior exemption or a senior freeze, you get discounted on your water bill.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell me which are the credits that they do receive?
For the city, hang on one second. I apologize.
So for seniors who reside in and own a single-family home, I believe the age cutoff for that is 65 and plus, who submit an application, they receive 100% off their sewer charge and 100% off their sewer tax charge. That's for the senior sewer exemption. If the customer also has the senior freeze with Cook County, the exemption with Cook County, then they are eligible for 50% off of the refuse charge. So the refuse charge is $9.50 per month. So for a single family home with one dwelling unit, that would be that charge. They would get half off that. Okay. And no penalty charges.
All right. How about seniors that own two flats, because it's their house, but their family, their children or live on the first floor or second floor? Is there a discounted on that?
So unfortunately, no. You have to have your own account, basically. So your own metered service or own assessment. So for a two-flat, properties are billed on a property basis. So for a two-flat, you would not be eligible for the senior exemption. You could potentially be eligible for the senior discount on the garbage charge because you are still potentially eligible for that with Cook County for the senior freeze.
I think we need to do a little bit more for the seniors who have two flats, because I get a lot of them who do qualify for senior freeze and senior exemption, but they don't qualify for at least a credit on their water bill. And, it's not fair that, throughout the city of Chicago, the seniors have to be burdened on this if it's easier for them to live in a single-family home. But I think we need to do better to look at seniors that have two flats and see if we could help them out with some kind of credit. Do you know what meters, do you have a data of old meters that are still out there working and running?
We can get that through the chair, the age of the meters.
Okay.
Is that?
Is there a way reaching out to those folks who have the old meters to see if we could replace them with the new technology meters?
We're working right now. We have an RFI to see which new technology we want to use. But once we figure that out, most likely we would prioritize some of the oldest ones or anyone that might have already, issues, any kind of issues we've seen with a transmitter.
Okay. Well, I'm with my colleagues. Finance has to do a better job with customer service because most of the residents or constituents or residents that come to our office, they're having issues on the other end of finance or water department trying to express what's going on with their water bill. And sometimes the customer service rep for the finance or water department doesn't want to hear it. They're setting their own tone. And they need to be a little bit more compassionate, but get the facts, but try and go out of their way to try and find a solution to help the resident out in their situation. Because, like Alderman Taylor said, these suburban municipalities and also cities that are using Michigan water and it's going through us, and we have to charge, and some of them haven't paid. And we know that some of these municipalities haven't been paying up for utilizing the water. We need to do a better job in trying to recapture that money, but also at the same time finding a solution for our residents. It's not fair that this senior was charged $45,000 and $16,000 and she had to sell. That's not right. We need to do a better job as a city and also departments communicating with each other, because from what I'm seeing, and I've been here, certain departments don't like to communicate with each other and it's lost in translation. So I think we need to do a better job in addressing those issues. And I think once we address them and we find a solution for this, for these water bills that are being calculated, we will be in a better place. And we won't have people leaving or basically losing their homes because they can't afford a simple water bill. But on that note, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Cardona. Does that senior exemption apply to seniors who have their own account but live in condominiums?
Senior exemption does not apply to seniors who live in condominiums. There is an annual $50 senior rebate that customers who own and live in a condominium or a townhome or a co-op unit where the building receives the bill and the individual does not receive the bill, they can qualify for an annual $50 senior sewer rebate.
And we can look at, to the Alderman's point, making sure that we review what it would look like to expand any senior programs, how many that would impact, and what the cost might look like.
Point of information, Alderman Cardona.
So, point of information, when you have a two-flat, senior owns a two-flat, it's one deed. It's not multiple. So it's one deed, it's under their name, but they have family members that live in the first floor or second floor, whatever it is. But I think it should be, if they get one or the other, they should be entitled to a credit on the water bill.
Yeah, and we can work with you on that because we've noticed a similar thing with some three flats as well. So thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. Alderman Hall, followed by Alderman Vasquez.
First of all, good morning, everyone. I want to first thank the commissioner. We've had some issues in the 6th Ward with some old water mains, and thank you and First Deputy for responding in a very timely manner to stop some very big water problems. My first question is, to that end, how much of the water bill, how much of the infrastructure that we need to be invested, how much of that shows up on a water bill? Or does it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about how you would break it down, but basically when you look at that water bill that's going towards, water operations, sewer operations, the debt for our capital I will think about what the breakdown that might look like specifically for like capital replacement and repair. It would be a very big portion of that.
I'm reminded of how the state comptroller sends out a tax piece, and then it has a breakdown of where your payments are actually going toward from the state side. We've talked internally about whether or not we could come up with similar graphics or something for a bill down the road, and if that's something that you're interested in talking with aldermen, I'd be interested in talking to you about it as well. There's going to be some areas that'll be tough to capture, but to be kind of transparent to the constituents on where your money's going, I think we could talk through that.
Got you. So basically, there's no point of reference when we look at a bill how much goes towards infrastructure improvement.
There wouldn't be anything.
All right. So secondly, the other question is, we mentioned technology. Could you explain how does the technology work, or does it even exist, where a resident can see in real time how much water they're using? Does that technology exist? Are there any plans for it? Because we've heard time and time again, I didn't know, I didn't hear, or 6 swimming pools worth of water in a home where a mother and a daughter. So is there any technology available where a resident can go online and see how much water they're using in real time, or in the last time you all captured it?
Yeah, not currently, but that's what we're moving towards. So that fixed system I mentioned with the cellular reads, what you end up doing is having things that are throughout the city to help transmit that data through the cellular system on a more regular basis, whether that be hourly or whatever we choose, so that they could get that in more real time. And when we first put in the technology in 2007, there wasn't enough meter to count to make that functional at the time. It was in its infancy in terms of technology, but now it's really well developed. So that's where we'll be able to get to that piece of transparency, so people know about an abnormal water usage sooner than once a month.
Gotcha. And we don't have a time frame though, right?
We're working on the RFI right now.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Thirdly, the third question I have is the appeal process, right? So we heard testimony of individuals who had some out the roof water bills, and so the appeal process. Could you explain it one more time, because I was a little confused? So if I get a bill that makes no common sense, if I get a parking ticket and there's an alleged violation, I go right to the hearing. I can go right away. So what's the process again if you get a out the box water bill to say, hey, this doesn't make sense, or I think it might not be right?
For more details, but as it comes through, if it's determined that on the water side that it is an actual usage, that there really isn't an appeal process beyond that part. You can contest it, but ultimately it is difficult. We're not allowed to forgive any of that debt. It's in statute. We'd like to work with council on a process to make sure that in those situations we have the ability to rectify them, that would give reasonable understanding to individuals that have extreme bills like that. For a situation where it determines there wasn't actually a leak or something, like there was an error, we would forgive that. We are working on making sure that is a quicker process, and that the individual has more information. As we've heard, there are people that feel like they just didn't get any information at all, and that's incumbent on us to strengthen our process on that. I can turn to Kat if she has any.
Not too much extra, just that when the customer calls in, the customer service staff will look at the account with the customer. They can go over the financial history with the customer. They can go over the history of readings if it's a metered account. They can go over how the bill is being assessed if it's a non-metered account. If there is a spike in usage and it makes sense for water management to go and take a look at the meter, confirm the meter reading, maybe potentially replace the meter so that it can be tested. The customer service staff can set up an appointment for the water management to come to the customer's property and do that. They do need appointments since most of the water meters are inside of the properties. Water management will do their inspection. They'll do the meter testing. That information will be provided to us, and the Department of Finance. And once we receive that, we'll review the information coming in from them and make a determination about whether the account was properly billed or not. And if it was not properly billed, then we would correct that through an adjustment.
Got
Point of information, Alderman Vasquez.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman. So, point of information, for that process you just described, what's the average amount of time that takes?
It would be dependent on so it's a great question. We try to work on improving, and as you heard from our call center, get down on that time. A lot of these very specific issues, they can take long, and it'd be dependent on the issue. I'll try to get a formal number for you to look at the ones that when we're dealing with just spikes. I think if we were just dealing with calls in general, it would be a low number, but it wouldn't really capture that issue that's going on.
Yeah.
So I'll try to tease that out for you.
So is that just for days, weeks, months? Like, what is that?
So if they're just calling in, a lot of issues are handled in that one call. And so in that situation, it would be short. But then, as you've heard, there are situations where it goes on for months, even years in some of those cases. So I'd like to tease that out to show you, and then where we can step up to fix those issues.
Thank you.
Alderman Hall.
Yeah, so in concluding, so as of right now, residents have no access to see water usage in real time. There's statute limitations for them to get justice for the injustice of water meters that are not accurately painting the picture of their usage. And then the amount of money that we pay in our water bills, we don't know how much is being used to improve the infrastructure as well as the necessary technology to make it equitable for everybody in Chicago. Because it seems as if it's coming soon, the technology to give updates in real time. It seems as if there's a statute limitation on what's the process for you to really get justice. There is a process, but there are some limitations to really, go ahead.
Before Commissioner Chang steps in on some of those, just on this, when you say statute limitations.
You said it.
No. I'm just confirming. So when I say there's a statutory limitation, there's no time statute limitation.
Okay.
The statute forbids me from forgiving debt that's a result of a leak. Even if there was a situation where somebody had a really high bill and it was determined there was a leak, and we even agree, as everybody in the room, hey, that's actually a fairly unreasonable situation, that individual wouldn't have known about that leak, the statute forbids me from forgiving that bill. So what we were discussing is, and the reason for that, just so you know, is we bond out our water, and the bondholders want to make sure that there isn't mass forgiveness on a bunch of different items. But there's got to be a middle ground here where there are these extreme jumps in bills, and they are a small portion of the revenue that we pull in to be able to have more authority to fix those issues. But right now, we cannot adjust them if it is an actual leak. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I don't think it's right.
No, I agree with you, Alderman.
Right.
Point of clarification, Alderman Moore.
Just on his statement, so I can be clear about the bond piece. Because the bond is not based on all this overage. It's basically based on the consistent.
Right.
revenue.
What I'm saying is for revenue collection that we're going to have bonded out, there wants to be clear from whatever bonding authority is that it's clear that we're not going to stop suddenly at collecting that revenue. So there's provisions within our statute on a lot of items to make sure that the city doesn't suddenly stop collecting certain revenues. In this situation, we have a provision in there to make sure that we're collecting the revenue that the city is owed, but there are these situations that come up where there's an unreasonable spike in that bill that might be caused by a leak, but the resident might not have been aware of it, or even if there was other extenuating circumstances. But statutorily, we can't fix that bill. I think we can work together to figure out what would need to be changed so we can do that going forward, which is, why I said that in my opening statement.
Thank you. Alderman Hall, do you have other questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Vasquez, followed by Alderman Spizzato.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chairman Villegas, for this, and thank you to the commissioners on the comptroller. First, for clarification, when you're saying statutory, is that state law that needs to be changed, or is that city council? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
I can give you the site if you want it.
No, actually, that's one of my questions. So I appreciated the Department of Finance's statements regarding like UBR expansion, targeting, because you see kind of the inequities, program recommendations, as well as process changes. If you could, through the chair, actually send us like either a list or a memo of recommendations, including change in municipal code, that would be super helpful for those of us who want to make those changes to help you all out.
Yeah, and there are also probably further conversations that we would like to have with every member to make sure we're doing this in the appropriate way.
Yeah, definitely. I would greatly appreciate it. So I appreciate the answers and intent on improvements. But this being government, the frustration is the lack of speed with which that happens. And I believe, as does Chairman Villegas and others, that a lot of it is modernization and technology, which is what I'm hearing here. What is the plan for modernization? Who in the departments is the lead on that plan, and what are the timelines? Because a lot of time we hear, yep, we know there have to be improvements, we're looking at, it's going to happen, but the timelines will be years out. And by the time you get to those solutions, you have other solutions that haven't been fixed. And so I think it's not the most exciting part of government, but I think fixing that is what gets everything else moving. So just wanted to get a sense on like who on the teams leads as far as the modernization, so we can follow up and have accountability there.
Thank you for the question. So in terms of water meter tech, it's water management and consult with AIS, particularly for our billing system. Those, we work on together and would be happy to, partner with you. I like tech. We put out the aldermanic portal. I like to modernize, and we usually do so rapidly. This is a very big project. Like just looking at the number of meters, right? We want to get this right, because last time, we put in that tech, but it did exactly what we're talking about. It took a long time back in 2007, and maybe if we'd have waited a year or two, we would have had a fixed network, right? So I want to make sure we're really looking at this and put the best thing in that's going to be a great system for the next 20 years.
Yeah. I would ask Mr. Warren, I know that when I recognize you as the IT man in the box there, if you could opine on, speak to Alderman Vasquez's question.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, based on the capital bonds that we have made provisions, and we have started the kickoff meeting to start looking at those innovations that we need to do for those systems. Just last Friday, we had a kickoff meeting in regards to that banner utility billing system to do a discovery meeting so that we could look at the previous contract that was established over 20 years ago. Also being the fact that most of the subject matter experts are no longer with the city. So we're looking at those things, putting everything together, bringing all the stakeholders together so that we could strategically plan on how to implement whatever that new system is. We have to do some research and go out into the industry to see what technology is actually available. As we look at this, we want to make sure it's something that we can scale and grow upon in the future. Looking at as we're managing outdated legacy systems today.
And then in terms of process, that's something we're working on right now. And as I've come in, there's a couple of different processes that I've been working with our senior team here, Joel and Elaine and Kat, to make sure that we implement, now, within the next few weeks and months, to make sure that we're tightening up those processes.
Okay, so we would definitely like to be in on those conversations. We've been doing it with 311, for example, to kind of lead on some of this, so please loop us in. I would love that. My concern, and I appreciate the commissioner's answer, is that when the answer ends up being AIS, it doesn't end up working, because AIS should not have been AIS. It should have been 2FM and an actual data information technology department separate from each other. So I just want to highlight that, and we'll continue to as we talk budget, because if we don't make that fix, everything that goes to AIS is going to get clogged up, and it slows things down, as does procurement when we're talking about RFIs or RFPs, right? So, okay, thank you for that. Next, sorry?
Point of information, Alderman Moore.
It was just said that we no longer have the subject matter experts. I'm lost. What happened to them?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah,
Warren mentioned that we don't have the subject matter experts anymore.
Those that manage that system or help develop that system previously are no longer with the city.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, that's why we want in, because it did also strike me that it was a kickoff meeting when it was like, this problem's not new, but I want to make sure that I have an understanding of the meetings and who's in them.
That meeting came together in regards to us identifying, when we look at all the systems that the city has, all the systems that are legacy, outdated, or something that we need to take action on.
Yeah, no.
In regards to one of the other aldermen mentioned that we've had this strategic plan for some time, but we haven't had anyone to execute on it.
Yeah.
We understand the issues and the concerns. We understand those systems, not only the banner, but other systems like the ERP system that we're working on. So we're working together to see how do we strategically put these actions together so we can move Chicago forward.
Yeah, and it's not exclusive. DOB has the same issue, right? Department of Buildings, when it comes to their systems being outdated, and all of this is why we need a specific department that's like IT data across all of them to kind of work through. So just thank you for that. My next, this is a little old school, but can we get org charts for both of the departments? Because we don't have that even as alders when we're trying to escalate things, which leads to us calling commissioners rather than like the precise people who would help depending on the situation.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is something I got from our team. Why is the Department of Finance customer service separate from like the 311 system? Is that the case where somebody's calling for 311 about water bill, they instead get routed somewhere else rather than a seamless process?
So I can confirm that is the case. We do have our own call center and utility billing and customer service. I'm not really sure that I can speak to the why specifically, but that is the case. I can let the water department speak to this, but for water leaks and urgent issues, that is something that folks should be calling 311 for, and then from there those calls will be routed appropriately. The calls that come to our area are billing specific and typically not emergency issues, and by that I mean like my water is out and it's 110 degrees, or like, I have a water leak and I need assistance immediately.
But as we look through our processes to improve those, we'll communicate and make sure you're looped in on some of that conversation.
And the reason I say is I think all of us experience it at the ward level where we end up being the stopgap, right? They go, hey, we called, this is an issue. They call our office, we then route to DOF and have to follow up. So I think actually this is probably the sum of my questions, because what it boils down to is the same issue. It's not exclusive to the departments. It's the fact that we don't actually modernize, and the folks who are in charge of modernize don't have their own department to then look across all of the other ones to improve that whole system. And if you don't have that top down, each one's trying to do it in silo in a way that leads to more outdated technology, different systems that don't speak to each other, and larger problems. So we'll be taking that on for every budget season until we get that
fight for
fixed.
another day. Got you.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. Where's that call center located? Is it in Chicago?
Chicago. Right now the call center. Right now the call center is operating virtually still from their homes. Most people are, but everyone is in the Chicago metro area. Most of the staff is in Chicago specifically.
Thank you. Alderman Spizzato.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I came a little late, so I'm just only have some comments. When I say I'll be brief, I promise to be brief. So coming from the School of Praising Public, Scolding Private, two things. I just want to, unfortunately, not many colleagues are left. So, Commissioner, I almost never call you, and that's because I usually call Marisol. So I recommend to my colleagues, if you have issues, to reach out to Marisol. Marisol, I know you're listening. Please don't be mad at me. And then secondly, Kathleen, never met you. Probably called you 5 or 6 times. Peter Gribble was great. You're just as great. If you have billing problems, people, just reach out to Kathleen. She's very responsive, gets things done. So it's a great opportunity for me to thank you for what you've done for me in the past and your responsiveness. So hopefully all my colleagues don't pile on you and call you all the time now, but thanks for everything. So that's all I wanted to say. Praise in public, scold in private, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to thank those people for all they do. And also, lastly, it'd be great if we could meter everybody like tomorrow, but that's an impossibility, Commissioner. I'm guessing it would take forever to give everybody a meter, and then everybody doesn't want a meter, so it's a near impossibility. I know many people in my community don't want meters because they like to water their grass or they have pools, so they don't want to pay the extra money for that. So not everybody wants a meter, but thank you, Kathleen, especially for helping me out with my billing problems. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Alderman Spizzato, and I'll add Elise to that list as well. Alderman Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out that, in my opinion, we could do a better job of educating the homeowners and residents of Chicago on the most common water leak that happens in homes. According to our friends at Local 130 Plumbers Union, they tell us that they call it the silent leak because, right, exactly, Nick, it doesn't involve any visible evidence of the fact that you have a leak at all. Most people think if you have a water leak somewhere in your home, you're going to see it. You're going to see water on the floor, water where it doesn't belong, coming through the ceiling, whatever. But in fact, a very small $5 item called a flapper valve, which is in the toilet box, is the most typical source of a water leak. And when that valve fails, the water simply runs from the box into the toilet on a constant basis. You may not even hear it because the sound of a toilet after it's flushed is so common in a house, it's like the sound of your refrigerator. It's there, it's in the background, but it's almost invisible to your ears because you're so used to hearing it. So a toilet in that condition is constantly having water flow from the box into the bowl and down into the sewer, and that's going to show up on the meter. When people say, well, my meter must be broken, actually, no. In this case, the meter is functioning precisely as it's designed. It's measuring this constant flow of water that is, in a sense, being wasted. And that happens so frequently, and plumbers tell us that's one of the more common calls that they get. So the average homeowner doesn't know that they call the water department because of a bill. Why aren't we informing them of this typical situation so they can at least investigate it for themselves? It should be on the website. It should be something that we can train our call center people to suggest you take a look at your toilet, see if if that's the case. That could solve a lot of angst going forward. And again, since our friends at Local 130 Plumbers tell us this is the most common household leak situation, we should be doing a little bit better job of educating the average person and telling them that this is a possibility so they can look into it for themselves and possibly remedy the problem, saving everybody a lot of time and money. Thank you for having this hearing. Alderman Villegas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hopkins. I was one that had that little silent assassin, I'll call it, and did not know until I had a plumber come in and tell me what the problem was. I was paying those high bills, so you're absolutely right. Alderman Villegas, thank you for bringing this before the committee today. I think all of us have learned more about the Department of Water and the billing system. Would like for you to close and to also speak to how you will follow up from this committee meeting today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for hosting this hearing, and I want to thank the constituents that actually came out to provide testimony in person. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to bring to this body the issues that you have gone through. And let me be the first to apologize that you were treated in the way that you were treated. That's not the way that the city operates, and that's not the way the city should operate. There's a lot of work to be done here. And as someone who's been a huge proponent of technology and someone who supports the IT department to the point where we were able to put in $350 million of capital dollars to upgrade our IT, we've got to do that quickly because there's cost savings associated with that. There's a better experience for constituents that can be that could come from it, as well as getting businesses up and running quicker. So technology's there to serve a couple of functions, and we just need to do a better job of getting it implemented. We do have that plan in place, as I stated, the Gardner report. We do have the funding available. We just need a CIO in place, so that way we can get him or her to quarterback this initiative. As it relates to some of the legislation, Chase, or Comptroller, that you mentioned, we definitely want to take a look at amending that if possible and making sure that we're in compliance with what the bond language is and making sure that we're not putting ourselves at risk. So we want to revisit that because, to your point, it is a small fraction, and we have to make sure that we're listening to our constituents. What I've heard is there's RFIs and this and that, and I think that time is of the essence. Time is of the essence. We've been talking about this for a few years now, this whole water billing issue, and we can't continue to keep talking about it. We've got to have action, and I'm going to be working with the body as well as the administration to put some time frames around this so that way we can measure it and get it done, finally get it done. There's no reason why people that are utilizing water, and everyone needs water, is put in these situations where they're being overbilled by tens of thousands of dollars. I can't even imagine the stress of a senior opening a bill and seeing a water bill that's worth more than their house in some instances, and putting in an unburdened stress on this person. As I stated before, in 2019, we dealt with the fines and fees, and bankruptcy was the number one issue. Fines and fees was the number one issue for Chicagoans to declare bankruptcy. We were putting our own residents in bankruptcy court with fines and fees. That's unconscious. We can't do that. And so I see that this is another issue that's coming down that path, and I want to make sure that we're addressing it because this is a big issue. Through the chair, Comptroller, could you send us currently, how much is the city currently owed in fines and fees for water bills alone?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
And we might have already provided.
Yep.
We'll make sure that we do.
Yep. And then you're also going to send us a flow chart on how the billing process works. These are just a couple of questions I had. I just want to make sure to get confirmation on that. And then with that flow chart, could you also include in there the communication that takes place between the departments, if any?
Certainly.
Okay. And then during billing disputes, are customers still being charged fines and fees during the dispute? Or does the meter keep running? Pardon the pun, does the meter keep running?
It depends on the situation, but we can provide further scenarios for how that might work, and that is an area that I'd like to work with this body on fixing or working on.
And then with AIS, is this one of the sections that you're looking to improve? I know you mentioned Banner, and I know Banner's a legacy system that's in place. Is that something we're looking to upgrade? And what's the time frame on that?
Thank you. Yes, there is something that we're looking to upgrade. Again, we're in the discovery phases, so we haven't put timelines and time frame and cost to that at the present time.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I guess there's a sense of urgency from us.
Absolutely, and I agree.
Yeah, and again, this is not something that's novel. There are other cities that are doing that bill for water and have done a pretty good job. And so I would recommend that you look at some of the larger municipalities or some of the larger cities in the country, whether it's New York, LA, and how they're providing billing, because we got to fix this. So I'm committed to working with all of you to address this issue, working with Chairwoman Dowell as well on this issue, because we got to get this right. We got to get this right. People don't mind paying for services that are provided. They just don't like to be gouged. And what we're seeing here is people are being gouged. And I know it's a small percentage of folks, but when you saw the senior citizen paying the water bill, even those in dispute, and now has to sue the city to recover that, that's something that we should not be doing. So I'm going to be working closely with my staff. Will be reaching out. Chairman Dow, I'll be reaching out to you as well. But I want to thank my colleagues for taking time. I want to thank you, Chairman Dow, as well, again, for having this hearing. So thank you, and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, Alderman Villegas, for your leadership on this issue. This has been a good meeting. I also want to thank Dr. Carroll and Dr. Evans for coming and giving their expert testimony. And there being no further business before the committee today, can I get a motion to adjourn? So moved by Alderman Moore to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The Committee on Finance is hereby adjourned.